I think more than anybody else, it is Jalen Hurts. I think it is. Look, we said last year he didn't have some of the pieces around him he needed. This year, you have that. He has everything he needs to succeed on offense. He has been given, a full year of starting under his belt. He knows what to expect. He has all that stuff set up for him. He actually has a better defense on the other side of the ball that should help them, in my opinion, get some better field position than they've had in the past as well. With Nick Sirianni, look, this is only his second year. His contract is obviously going much longer. With Jalen Hurts, this is the year. You put up or shut up this year. And while he is the big scapegoat in my mind, I also think this guy thrives in this position.
Countdown to the season is on. We're down to single-digit days. The Eagles report next Tuesday, so 8 and counting for us here on Birds 365, which means it's 8 and counting for our next guest, too. He is the sports anchor for the outlet that broadcasts the Eagles more than any other station here in town. On the TV side, that'd be FOX29. Scott Grayson jumps in with us here on Birds 365. Mr. Grayson, you ready to get outdoors and do some Eagle B-roll?
I tell you, this week, maybe not so much. It's been pretty hot out there.
Yeah, it's going to be a hot one this week. I think we got 8 days of 90 plus. So I'm glad the Eagles are starting next week at least. Maybe
hopefully
we'll get a little bit break in the weather, Scott.
But it's not like it used to be with the 2 days and this kind of stuff.
No. Yeah, we shouldn't complain. And we're going to only be out there for an hour and a half. So thanks to Nick Sirianni for that. Although I think it comes from the top, but whoever's in charge, I thank them for that. Where should we start, Scott? Jody and I were talking about expectations and about, the thought process of they've gotten to the point where, 2 things can happen. You either live up to the expectations and everything is hunky-dory, or glass is half full. Things are not quite as good as they were projected to be. And then comes scapegoat season. Who is more likely to be scapegoated if the Eagles don't live up to expectations? When you look at this team, this roster, could be on the field, could be off the field.
I think more than anybody else, it is Jalen Hurts. I think it is. We said last year he didn't have some of the pieces around him he needed. This year, you have that. He has everything he needs to succeed on offense. He has been given, a full year of starting under his belt. He knows what to expect. He has all that stuff set up for him. He actually has a better defense on the other side of the ball that should help them, in my opinion, get some better field position than they've had in the past as well. With Nick Sirianni, look, this is only his second year. His contract is obviously going much longer. With Jalen Hurts, this is the year. You put up or shut up this year. And while he is the big scapegoat in my mind, I also think this guy thrives in this position everywhere he's been in his career, from college, all the way through up till now. Let's see if he does it again. We've seen him. He looks like he's been working hard this offseason in the weight room. And I got to believe the way he is, what we know about him, that he's been doing that behind the scenes with film as well. So I think if you look at it and say, okay, he is going to be the big scapegoat in my mind if things don't go well. I also say this guy has thrived in these situations. And if you look at their schedule, the football gods are smiling down on them. I think it's set up for them and for him to possibly have a pretty good year.
Scott, we talk a lot about what we believe the Eagles are going to do on offense this year. Well, no one really knows until they get out there and they actually start running some plays. But with the major addition they made at wide receiver, A.J. Brown, you've got to believe they're going to try and pass the ball more than they did last year. It's not going to be hard since they were the most run-heavy team in the National Football League this year. They made it work for them. But we all project that they're going to try and be different this year and be more pass-heavy. If that's the case, how much of the Eagles' passing offense is going to include the running back position? Last year was not a major part of the Eagles. The passing game wasn't a major part of the Eagles. And if the passing game is down, the passes to the running backs are going to be down. what's going to work for the Eagles out of the backfield this year? A lot of people are projecting Kenny Gainwell to have a bust-out type season. He caught the ball for under 200 yards last year. Miles Sanders was great as a rookie catching the ball out of the backfield. Hadn't done diddly the last 2 years. How much is throwing to the running backs going to be part of the Eagles' offense this season?
I think that's a great point, and that's going to be kind of the X factor in some of these games, Jody. When you look at it, this team did not, utilize that position a lot in terms of throwing the ball to them. But these are guys that can succeed in space. Miles Sanders can succeed in space. He's just got to be able to catch the ball first, which at times in the past has not been easy for him. Kenny Gainwell, I agree with you, could end up having a huge year. Just simply playing it out, the game of chess, right? A.J. Brown gets covered or double teamed. They stay, tight on, say, Devontae Smith out there. Well, where do your options end up being? If they're overplaying a certain spot on the field, somebody's going to be left wide open. And a lot of times it could be that running back that leaks out of the backfield. Sometimes it may not even be the designed play, but you have a great offensive line like they do. You get enough guys blocked long enough, and a running back leaks out of the backfield and suddenly has 10, 15 open yards in front of him. I think that could be a huge part of this offense when you stop and look at it. Because I agree with you, they are going to look to pass more this season. Like you said, they really can't pass less. And I think that when you have this offensive line as solid as it is, the big caveat, as long as it stays healthy, that you really could end up having a great offensive year this year. I still think the running game is going to be a big part of it. They want to keep the threat of Jalen's legs alive every game. So you're going to see some of those calls where he does take off and go on a designed quarterback run. But they also want him to stay healthy, and that's going to be a big key too. But I think that's going to be something to watch early in the season with this team is, everybody's all jacked up about A.J. Brown out there. The opponents know about him. Devontae Smith had a good rookie year. They're going to play up on him as well. Either tight ends or your running backs are going to have to be the ones that catch a bunch of those passes when those guys are covered. And I think Kenny Gainwell's a guy who really could have a big year.
When it comes to Kenny Gainwell, because I'm with you, Scott. He's got tremendous natural ability as a receiver, whereas Miles does not. So I think those two are going to be clearly defined as sort of Miles as the early down back, the RB1, so to speak, and Kenny's going to be the third down back and the hurry up back. But I've heard this floated by people with the Eagles, and Jalen Hurts is so effective as a runner. You take away some of those outlet plays, whereas somebody like Phillip Rivers, who this coaching staff can't stop talking about because he's such a smart player and they love him so much. And, he would have to dump the ball off to an outlet receiver, a running back. Jalen Hurts, if he dumps the ball off to Kenny Gainwell, you might get 10, 15 yards, as you said. If he holds the ball and runs it, he might get 20. And it ends up being a better play. And the Eagles are sort of on that tightrope, as you mentioned. I want to keep them healthy. But how do you keep them healthy? Design runs, I think you want to scale back those and say third down. Go get the first down. That's the most important down. Do it by hook or by crook. That philosophy, what do you think of it?
I understand it. But and we've seen this with quarterbacks in the past. You can tell them you want them to do something. And when they get out in that open field, or they have that opportunity to go get, say it's 3-4 yards on one of those, read plays that Jalen does so well. That's a design play. He reads it well. They have the tools to do it. Do you do it that way, or do you drop back and let the play develop and see what he might be able to get on his own with his legs? Here's the one thing we all know coaches do. When they see they have their number one quarterback, not necessarily a franchise quarterback, but they have their number one quarterback, they all get scared about that guy getting hurt. So then they start limiting the opportunities with hits. How many times can that guy get hit? And they want to start limiting that. We saw that with Wentz. We've seen that going all the way back to even Randall Cunningham, with this franchise. And they want that quarterback to not take those hits. because you've seen even with Michael Vick, they can eventually get caught by somebody and it can knock them out of a game for weeks. This team can't afford that. So I think I'm curious to see how much of a conscious effort is made to keep the hits off this guy. It's part of his game. You can't take him away from running the ball. But in key spots, are they going to say this is a time where we need to let him go? And then are there times where, and I think we're going to learn some of that early in the season, what he's been coached to do when he gets outside that pocket. Are his eyes staying downfield? Because we've seen he missed guys last year because he took his eyes off the field once he rolled out of the pocket. Will he keep his eyes downfield? Let that be a weapon for him because the defense is going to stay put to honor his speed, and that allows a receiver to find a hole somewhere. Well, if you keep your eyes open, John, I'll take your 10-yard gain and I'll raise you 30 yards because he hits a guy downfield. Are those the things we're going to see from Jalen Hurts? And I think we're going to figure out pretty early in the season. Unfortunately, we got to wait till the regular season to really see what happens. But I think that's going to be a big key. And he's got to trust his running backs out in the field in the flat like a Kenny Gainwell. I could go get 20 maybe, but I'm going to take a hit. If I can get Kenny Gainwell to get me 10 and a first down, you know what? That's good enough.
Scott, let me ask you about something we've been kicking around for the last several weeks here on Birds 365 in analyzing the roster. And that's the only thing we can be doing at this stage because they haven't actually started the season yet. One area that does kind of look like a potential weakness is backup tight end. We all believe Dallas Goedert is sitting on a big year. He got paid last season. He went out and performed and had a tremendous statistical year, specifically after Zach Ertz left and he became the unquestioned go-to guy at tight end. Well, he's that again this year. And Eagles roster has a bunch of maybes as their backup. Now, we're crossing our fingers that Dallas Goedert's good to go 17 weeks this year. But you never know. There's always the possibility of injury. He does play the game and the position very hard, which means anything can happen any given week. He could go down. Do you think Howie Roseman is good? Do you think this coaching staff is good with the tight ends they have here? Do they believe they have the guy who's going to step up and fill in if Goddard goes down? Or do you think that's an area where Howie is still out there scouring the league and going, yeah, I got to get a better backup tight end?
I think that's one spot you hit on, Jody, that they could potentially look to see who starts getting cut when the cuts are made. This team does that. They scour that wire all the time when those cuts are made, and we get down to that point in the year. Where can we pick up a better option than what we have? Yeah, I agree with you. Dallas Goedert he deserved to be paid. I think he's definitely shown that he can play that role well, and I think tight end on this team is going to be a huge position this year. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for that spot on the field to really move the ball down the field because I just fully expect that Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are going to get a lot of attention on the outside. So the middle and guys that fly into the outside after those holes are vacated on an out route or things like that could be wide open for a guy like Goddard. And I think he can beat most linebackers off the line. So he's a matchup problem. But you're right, when he goes down, then what do? You don't have that guy right now. And now maybe you have some serviceable guys, but you're going to have to readjust your offense to say my tight end is not going to be my big threat when my wide receivers are covered. So I think, they're going to be watching. I think Howie's good, has shown that he can be good with his coaching staff when he works together with them in watching those wires and saying, okay, hey, this guy was cut. I want him, and Howie go get him. And they can try to fill in some depth there, but that is a spot of concern for sure, Jody.
Another spot that, and I'll give a hat tip to our buddy Jeff Kerr and the people at CBS. It's the list. It's the season of list, Scott. Everybody's got list out. They did their top players over the age of 30. Now, the Eagles have done a good job over the past 2 years sort of repopulating this. A.J. Brown's only 25. You mentioned Devontae Smith. Looks like a really, really good player. Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean this year, they're getting younger. They're getting more talented. They're getting better. But still, the majority of the proven good players on this team are over 30. And 3 of their top over 30 players were Darius Slay, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, 31, 32, 34. Jason's going to be 35, I think, in December. Lane's going to be 33. Starting to worry a little bit. Pletcher, you can add Pletcher to this list. You're starting to worry a little bit that too many of the good players on this team are a little bit too old, or is that sort of too much hand wringing for the offseason?
No, you age is a key. Age, I feel like, is a key number in football more than any other sport. You can look at baseball and see 40-year-olds still succeeding, unless you're a punter in the NFL or a field goal kicker. Your age doesn't matter, but everywhere else, I think age is a big key of when the wheels are going to start to fall off the wagon. Not for every guy, but for most of them. And so I think there is concern there, but John, perspective is such an interesting thing because, as you pointed out, this team just 2 years ago was that's what we were all screaming in the offseason. This team has to get younger. They can't continue to operate at that age and be successful. And they have found success through youth in every position along the way that with the players you mentioned. They've added through the draft much better, which has been a big key because we've all ripped Howie for some of his draft performances in the past. And I think as you look at some of those players, you do worry about the age. How's Brandon Graham going to respond from this injury? And he's had a full year almost to get over that, which is great for him. And I do expect him to come back and have a good year. But you don't know. And Jason Kelsey's been talking about retirement for 5 years. But mentally, he seems like he's fired up for this season and really wanted to come back and see what could happen. But, Fletcher Cox, when we could talk about whether bringing him back was the right thing to do or not. I think he's going to be more of a depth player, which is, well, then you worry about, well, how's he going to respond to that? That's not something he's had to do much in the past. And so I think age is a concern for some of these guys. Darius Slay's one of those guys. You can see the guys who take care of their body, I guess is a good way to put it. And when you see a Darius Slay running around, I feel pretty good that he's going to be okay this year. He's also out there in a corner. The biggest thing you worry about with them is a broken wheel at some point running around more than the contact. Elaine Johnson, that guy is so important to this offense. Look at what he did last year, barely even giving up a sack. I mean, but he goes down and you worry all those times he drops back, and you see those slow-mo replays. And these guys, when they drop back to pass block and they plant that right leg in his spot, it's at what time is he going to plant that? And his age is going to say, listen, my bones are starting to break down here on this body, and I'm going to give out this play because that guy you're pushing that's 350 pounds, I don't really can take that anymore. And so I worry about the age of some of these guys. But in Lane Johnson's case, I really do like the depth on this offensive line for the most part. I feel like they're a good offensive line on starting role, and we haven't said this a lot in the past. I do feel like they have some depth behind them, and we've seen that withstand at times in the past. But am I concerned about the age of some of those players? Yes, football more than any other sport to me. Age is not just a number. It matters. And I think that they have to continue to trend in getting younger as time goes on for sure.
Scott, just before you hopped on with us, I stated to my partner, I think one of the most oversold stories of this offseason is, Jalen Hurts, his second year in the same system. No coaching change. All right, it's nice, and it'll make things a little bit easier, but I don't know if it's the cure-all that some people are looking for. But the more you do something, the better you should get at it, the easier it should be. Is that the case with year 2 of Nick Sirianni? We're only 12 months removed from Nick opening up his first camp ever as a head coach. That is work. That is unknown and uncharted territories. But he's got the full year under the belt. They had the success and the end that they had, but most people didn't think the Eagles were going to make the playoffs last year, and they did. And Sirianni proved to be a legitimate head coach in the NFL. How much easier, if at all, is his job here in year 2?
I think it's going to be much easier. I think experience for a young coach is not something you should understate. I think that first year was big. And I feel like in my mind, you can almost divide that first year up into 2 separate seasons. The first season if you remember, they were pass happy. They went nuts with the passing game, and he was calling the plays. And that proved to be not a good first year if you want to divide it up into that. His second year, the second half of the season, obviously, was much better. And he stepped away from some of the play calling more and more, started helping Jonathan Gannon a little bit and recognizing things on offense. Now, and they didn't have – this is the other key. They didn't have the personnel on both sides of the ball that either coordinator wanted. And so now you've said, okay, well, we gave you the personnel in the offseason. You've got a year of experience under your belt. Jonathan Gannon, we kept saying, and I think this was the case, and we'll see if we're right or not, just wasn't able to go into his playbook nearly the way he wanted to. We called his defense vanilla. It was basic. They weren't getting pressure on the quarterback. Well, now they've got pieces to really do that. And so I want to see what kind of defensive playbook is Gannon going to roll out this year. Are we going to see if, in fact, we were right last year? That obviously benefits Sirianni and his offense, but from the simple standpoint that they're going to get better field position if some of those things happen, and they might get some turnovers along the way. Short fields are loved in the NFL, and so you look at the experience that that Sirianni got last year, and I say he learned a lot throughout the season. You saw a guy who was willing to evolve at a young age. Some of these older head coaches are so set in their ways. I will call the plays on this team until this ship sinks, and it might even mean their job.
Yeah.
He decided to, you know what, the team and what we can do as a team is better. The players responded. To me, that's the biggest key. He never lost that locker room, and I was afraid early on that he might. And I talked about that several times throughout the season. I thought that these older players were going to look at this younger coach. The things they were doing weren't working, and they were going to go, whoa, this season, let's start making off-season plans now. And he didn't. He kept that locker room together. The fact they got into the playoffs for me was huge. I didn't care how they performed in that playoff game. Just getting Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, some playoff experience to me was huge. And then you go and you play it forward and you say, okay, well, they've gotten the personnel now on both sides of the ball to be more dangerous. They've got more experience in some key spots. They've got good young players that they filled in. Kobe Dean, I love that addition. Huge. And Hassan Reddick. I think that's another huge addition on that defense. And then you look at the schedule and you say, wow, this really played up well. This defense isn't going to face an elite quarterback really all year. Don't give me Dak Prescott. I don't consider him elite. I think he's good. He's not elite. And I think that this defense really should have a schedule set up where it succeeds. It's going to make things easier on the offense. This offense has better players. So does the defense. These coaches, I think we're going to see, are going to be able to show more of who they are and who they can be. So you talked at the beginning, John, about expectations. I look at this and say, I think the expectations are pretty high, which then also means that if you fail to reach them, that seat's going to get pretty hot that they're all sitting on.
Yeah, it certainly is. Scott Grayson, follow him on Twitter at @SGraysonFox29, anchor at Fox29, host of Props and Locks, so you could win some money if you watch Scott every Friday. Last one from me. You mentioned Jonathan Gannon. Everybody says vanilla defense we're going to see this year. You're right. That's the narrative, Scott. Jody and I don't know if you heard when you were in the green room, this team was 32nd in the NFL. There's 32 teams, 32nd in the NFL when it came to pre-snap motion. Are they too vanilla on offense as well?
Yeah, I think they were last year, and that's where you talk about a running back like Kenny Gainwell. We can go back to that conversation, so to speak. Well, what's the best way to get him open out of the backfield? Well, put him in motion. Make linebackers have to stick with these running backs as they go from one side of the field to the other. And I think we are going to see a lot more because, again, what I saw from Nick Sirianni last year was a coach who was willing to evolve and say, maybe I don't know all things right now, but I'm going to pay attention and try to learn from them. These coaches, the good ones, spend a lot of the offseason self-scouting themselves, right? They're obviously looking at their opponents, but they go back and they look at themselves. And I think that's one of those glaring things, John, that you brought up that he's not going to like to see. Wow, we were last in pre-snap motion. That can't happen again, especially with the weapons they have. What's the best way to avoid getting bump and run at the coverage at the line?
Yeah.
Be in motion.
Especially with
they
Devontae.
can't check you.
Yeah.
And go ahead and try to bump and run with a guy like AJ Brown. I guarantee you that guy is so strong he's going to beat you. So I gotta believe there's going to be a lot more, pre-snap motion. Are they going to be the number one team in the league this year with it? No, I think we're looking at, if they put themselves somewhere in the top 15 to 20, that's already a much better improvement. But I think that's something that Sirianni will look at and say, wow, where did we fail a little bit as an offense or as a staff in calling some plays? Well, let's get some guys in motion a little bit more and make some things happen from to our advantage with the pieces we have that way.
Scotty, I did get a text while we were doing the show here. It came from this guy named Aaron Rodgers. He said, WTF, did Scott Grayson really say we're not playing a franchise quarterback this year? So you might want to get back to Aaron on that one.
I misstated by saying no, but they have very few elite quarterbacks.
Very few, yes. I
that
think
they're going to face this year.
I think Aaron will accept that apology.
Yeah, that works.
Last thing, any specialized programming on Fox this year around the Eagles, tied to the Eagles that we can keep our eye out for when we get this thing underway next week?
Well, like John said, we have our Props and Locks show, which deals with all football things as we get closer, Eagles especially. But then we will still have our game day live coverage. The day of the game on Fox, you'll want to keep an eye out for that. We, of course, have the Super Bowl this year, so we'll be building out and rolling out some special programming as well related to that once it gets closer. Whether that's related to the Eagles or not remains to be seen. And I think a lot of people, while saying that they would be optimistic that they get there, it's not realistic right now. So those are the things we've got going on right now. We've got a lot of things we're throwing in the fire, whether or not they're going to end up coming out the other end. You know how that goes on the production side. But yeah, we're definitely going to keep an eye on this team. And I think, like I said, I think the expectations are pretty high all around.
As well as they should be. It's kind of a wide open NFC. Scotty, great stuff. We appreciate you coming on board. We're going to have you back plenty as the season rolls along. Give our regards to our buddy Shredder. Thanks for joining us this morning.
I will do. I appreciate it. Always enjoy talking to you guys too.
Thanks.